Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is a reskin of Puyo Puyo. It had some characters from one of the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons added onto it, and it was released as a stopgap between the other Sonic games, much like Sonic Spinball was. This wasn't the first time this happened to a Puyo Puyo game. It happened again with Kirby later on, and it's not the first time that Sega has worked with Compile. They would eventually buy the rights to Puyo Puyo, and from roughly the mid-2000s or so, that's when Puyo Puyo would be released under Sonic's publishing brand. It's a very long and weird story that doesn't always make a whole lot of sense, especially when I looked at it, but it is kind of a fun idea that they took this game, painted basically Sonic on it, and called it a day. Even if Sonic never really appears in the game, it's still pretty cool to see something like this. They could have just released Puyo Puyo, but, whatever, that's not what they wanted to do. Anyway, let's get more into the game and just see what it has to offer. The Puyo Puyo series has been going on since 1991, when Compile released the first game. That company made the games until 2000, when Sonic Team took over development, and since 2000, Sega has been the series' publisher, as well as owning the IP outright. The first Puyo Puyo game was released in North America as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. This was done in 1993. And then Super Puyo Puyo was released as Kirby's Avalanche. That is also known as Kirby's Ghost Trap. That game was released in 1995. As these two games were the only ones that were released outside of Japan at the time, no one really knew the name Puyo Puyo, at least outside of Japan. There are a total of 28 games in the Puyo Puyo series as of 2025. Sega owns the rights to it, and they've released 2 crossovers with Tetris that I'm aware of. They may have done more at the time of me recording this. But yeah, the series is still going on. It's been fairly successful on both the console, handheld, and in the arcade. So yeah, there's still going to be more Puyo Puyo games. And I think I've said that name enough, so now I'll just go back to saying Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine from here on out. Let's get into the game's story, its gameplay, and graphics really quick. Okay, so I am committed to getting through this without laughing, and I am going to really do my best. So, we do have a story with this game. It's largely a Dr. Robotnik story because Sonic could care less about all the characters in this. So we have Dr. Robotnik, and he has set his sights on Beanville and is planning to menace the residents there with his Mean Bean steaming machine. Okay. He's planning on grouping the Beanfolk up into groups of 4 and steaming them, which will turn them into robots somehow. I'm not really sure what his plan is. I don't think he knows what it is either. It really doesn't matter all that much. Anyway, you have to group them up, but instead of steaming them, you're setting them free. And somehow that causes other beans to drop on the robot that you're fighting. All of this gets explained in the manual, and yeah, it's not really, it's really just nonsensical and funny, but that's sort of what you should expect from a story like this. So you have to bust open the Henchbot's dungeon to advance to the next stage. I know what they're trying to say, but when I was looking at the manual, I was just like, I don't get this. It's just a really terrible way of explaining everything. Anyway, when you look at the game, it makes a whole lot more sense. You're just trying to drop all of these blocker beans on top of the enemy, and then eventually they get to the top and that ends the game. That's really all you're trying to do. If you've ever played Tetris Attack or any of the Puyo Puyo vs. Tetris games, then you kind of know what you're supposed to do. You just fill up the other guy's screen and then you win and move on to the next phase. And you have this nonsensical story to laugh at. That's really all it is. So this is a falling block puzzle game. The format has been repeated so many times with countless other puzzle games. It works very well for something like this because you just kind of instinctively know what you need to do. You're just matching the like things with the like things, and then eventually they disappear, and you can move on to the next stage, or you can just keep going where the game speeds up. That's a very basic explanation of what this is. There's a little more to it, especially if you go through the story mode, or if you're playing with someone else. Most modern games are match 3 games, where they have to arrange items into groups of 3 or more. Mean Bean Machine and other Puyo Puyo games differ a little bit because they're match 4, but you don't have to have like a straight line or anything because these are just sort of blobs. They can be arranged in any grouping of 4 or more. Pretty much you can have a group of 4 red beans in, straight line, a block of 4, any way that you can possibly think of. As long as they're touching, it doesn't really matter. In the, competitive parts where you're either fighting the computer or you're fighting another person, if you can string together longer combos, then you can drop more colored blocks on your opponent, or blocker blocks, essentially. It's a pretty fun game. It works out very well. It's much better than what Columns was. I like this game a lot more than Tetris as well, just because of the freedom you have to kind of put these in any real order that you want. The story mode consists of 13 stages. Each boss character is taken from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon show. I don't know which one this one actually is, because there were 2 of them out at the time, and they kind of just blended together for me, but it's from one of those. It's a nice way to promote the 2 cartoons for Sonic, as well as kind of get some name recognition for this video game. I'm assuming it worked out alright. I couldn't find sales figures, but you never know. Overall, it's a pretty nice game to play. It's challenging for the most part. The story mode is pretty difficult, but it's a fun little puzzle game to play. The graphics look pretty good. The story is told through cutscenes, and those are pretty much what you should expect. It's just, a background with the character you're going to be fighting, kind of dancing around a little bit. It's nothing amazing, but it's there at least. One strange thing about this game is that your character is never shown, so you don't really know who you are. I don't think you're playing as Sonic or one of the other characters from the cartoon. It's just never really explained. The manual doesn't care enough to tell you who you are, and the game never does either, as far as I know. So yeah, it's kind of weird in that little aspect, but overall, it doesn't really matter who you are in this game. There really isn't too much else to say about it. The graphics get the job done. It's pretty easy to see what's going on. When the game speeds up, it can get a little bit hectic. When this game was released, it got mostly 9s. That's a pretty stark contrast to the reviews more recently, like in the 2000s and the 2010s, where they gave the game, 6s and 7s, which is just kind of strange. I'm not really sure why they did that. According to Wikipedia, GamePro gave the game a 5 out of 5 when it was released. In reality, it was closer to a 4.5 or a 4.25, but that's okay. They just looked at fun factor and figured that was the score. Mega, a UK publication, gave it a 90 out of 100, which is kind of fun. Basically, it was a fun game when it was released, and I guess people don't really get it now, or it's, just been kind of knocked down a bit because of the other puzzle games. I'm not going to pretend like I actually understand the grading system back then or even now. It's just kind of weird to see that. just the fact that it started out at a 9 and then dropped all the way down to like a 6. It's very strange. Anyway, I enjoyed this game. Even if it is a little weird, I just kind of find it to be kind of funny. Mostly because of the story behind it, but I really like Puyo Puyo, so I can just pretty much ignore the story mode and just have fun on the single player parts. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.